Time to talk some AFC North action as we get closer to the start of the regular season. And when we talk AFC North, matter of fact, we're going to be talking AFC North on Monday as well. That is when we're going to talk some Baltimore Ravens football with Tony Lombardi. But that's on Monday. We've already talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're also going to be talking, actually, you know what? Let me throw that back on. And we're also going to talk about the Cleveland Browns coming up on Wednesday with Fred Greetham. But right now, it's Cincinnati Bengals talk. And that means, once again, John Sheeran joining us. John, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on.
You got it, John. Always glad to have you on. And it's awesome that we get this opportunity to talk about maybe a season where the Bengals can make it back to the Super Bowl.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, right. But it all starts with the big boy, Joe Burrow, and everybody wants to know, is he healthy and is he ready to go?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten very clear updates by design. Zach Taylor's kind of been through this before, not just with Burrow, but with a lot of his star players going through injuries. He's purposely kept things kind of vague. And the several weeks timeline that he originally gave, I think almost exactly a month ago, it ended up being the case just because they could afford to be cautious and just taking this very, very slow just because they weren't in a rush to play a regular season game. But the limited video that we've had of Burrow walking around, going through a warm-up before the first preseason game, things definitely seem to be on track. And it wouldn't shock anyone in Cincinnati if he was back practicing in a helmet as early as next week. It may be until the week leading up to the actual game against the Cleveland Browns, but I think we're in that final stage of him getting back to 100% if he's not already feeling 100% right now.
Big scare there, but for everybody, even outside of Cincinnati, look, if you love an NFL, you want all the top players to play, and so it's great that Joe Burrow is going to play. That's awesome, and of course, it's a very tough conference. So without Joe Burrow, I don't even know what the Bengals would kind of look like. Who would be
not good?
No, Trevor Siemian would probably be able to start. Then he'd probably get hurt after about a quarter or two. That's his makeup. And then Jake Browning, I guess, would get the nod, huh? Is he gonna? You think they're gonna keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks?
I think they'll keep 2. I'm not sure if the second quarterback is on the roster right now.
Oh,
because neither Browning nor Siemian have exactly ran away with that quarterback 2 competition. I think Browning has the slight edge over Siemian just because he actually has more experience than Siemian in this specific offense, despite being like 5 or 6 years younger. And I think he just has a more livelier arm at this point. So he showed slightly more compared to the veteran Siemian. But again, if there was another quarterback that were to become available who had a higher upside or just is frankly better than either of these 2, it wouldn't shock me if the Bengals went in another direction entirely.
Yeah, because you would think if there's a team out there that can use a veteran quarterback to come in for a couple of games if necessary, and that they'd want to be there, thinking that they could be a part of something. The Bengals got to be at the top of the list, knowing that, Burrow's had some injury issues before. So I got to believe that they've got something in the works, right? I mean, who's even out there right now that's available? I mean, besides Joe Flacco, is there anyone else that's like available that's not on a team?
I think I've heard like Nick Foles being floated around. I don't see a Nick Foles situation happening here. Kellen Mond was interesting before he was reclaimed, I guess, by Cleveland when they decided to do whatever they wanted to do.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like the options are obviously slim. You don't want to, talented quarterbacks available for other teams to kind of pluck away. But this was definitely an issue that should have been addressed more prominently in March and April. I think the Bengals wanted a quarterback like an Aiden O'Connell or like a DTR who's up in Cleveland, but they just never really got that opportunity. And now they're kind of stuck, wanting more out of that QB2 situation.
Yeah, it's maybe something they should address long-term backup next year's draft. That's always a good idea. But again, hopefully Joe Burrow stays healthy. Before we go into the depth chart, which we've already got posted up there, I'm going to bring up your Twitter page. So you're now, because we did talk to you a few months ago, but we didn't really get into this. So you are now, there's a couple of new things. First of all, you have this A to Z Sports connection now. You're writing for them, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how's that going?
Yeah, it's been great. I started in March, essentially taking over the Bengals beat, and that's been a really cool experience. Obviously, I've been writing about the Bengals for a long time with Cincy Jungle. I enjoyed every single minute I was with Cincy Jungle and SB Nation. This was a chance to kind of expand my horizons into a larger role with now an NFL-wide website covering, if not all 32 teams, pretty damn close to it. But yeah, taking over as the lead Bengals writer and kind of putting my stamp on Bengals coverage as I see fit has been a really, humbling and welcoming opportunity for me.
And then you also have your podcast, which we're picking up here. And this one is available. It's called the Number One Bengals Podcast.
Yeah,
This
so
one
this
here,
is
right?
Yeah, so I'm on here with the puppets, Daddio and Hoji, and our good friend Bridget. So we do about a weekly show covering the Bengals in a very unique way. And also, there's the other podcast that is still associated with SB Nation, the Orange and Black Inside of Bengals podcast, where we do a bi-weekly show during the season, recaps, previews, analysis, all sorts of things.
Yeah, because I actually I have I think we're subscribed to that ourselves, and here it is. Oh, that's not it. Orange and black. Look at this. What
Gotta
is
go the
this?
insider.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
We
There
don't
it
care
is.
about whatever that is. Here it is. Orange and Black Insider Podcast. So there you go. Oh, wait, I know this guy here.
Yeah.
So this is the YouTube channel. Check it out. We're gonna have links in the description area for everybody for these for the YouTube channel, and also, of course, for A to Z Sports. So if anybody wants to check that out, it makes it real easy. Let's go back now to the depth chart, because we're going to go up and down the depth chart here and talk about what the Bengals have looked like since our last conversation after the draft, how things are changing. Starting on offense. So we know the big three. Everything's fine there. And we've talked in the last year or so about how they needed to pick up the depth in that room, and he certainly did that. We talked about the draft pickups. How's that looking so far with these two young kids?
It's looking great. Like you touched on the big three. I think they even look even better than what I expected, just because T. Higgins has like a whole contract situation that's kind of looming over his head, but he looks phenomenal in camp, and he's been more than willing to practice amidst all that. Jamar Chase continues to grow even better, if that's even possible, and Tyler Boyd is that stable rock. But behind him, you're right, Andre Josevich has been maybe the biggest surprise in all of training camp, considering he came from an Ivy League school where you're not really faced with the most physical competition, but he's looked the part in camp. He's been the most active receiver in preseason for the Bengals. He's got, I think, north of 20 targets, and he's looked really good doing it too. Like whether it's winning vertically or winning on the underneath routes, gaining yards after the catch. Like he's looked, I think, better than a lot of people expected, more than just a guy who was going to be a red shirt option for this year. He may not be active on game days, but he's definitely one of the 5 or 6 receivers on this team that can make an impact. Charlie Jones, he unfortunately suffered a labrum injury in the early part of training camp, and he's kind of battling through that. It's possible that that the team could have shut him down and required surgery, but he's opting to play through it. So that may impact how much he develops as a rookie this year, playing through pain. But he's looked okay when he's got his opportunities as well. He's going to be limited to the slot in this offense as a rookie, and that's perfectly fine because they have guys like Trent Irwin and Andre Josevich who can win on the outside to give guys like Chase and Higgins some rest over the course of the season.
Yeah, and so you pronounce Andre's last name Iosevich?
Josivas.
Josivas. Okay, very interesting. You gotten to perfect that?
So he actually said it on like a Bengals Twitter. It's like Yo C Vash. I think you actually added an H, like an H at the end of it.
Josivas. Got it.
There you go.
All right, so I'm all set now. All right, so now let's talk about the running back position, because it certainly didn't look all that great some months ago with Joe Mixon. And there was Could Trevion Williams take over that number 2 role with P. Ryan gone? Chase Brown was drafted. Chris Evans is still there. So how's the room looking now?
So Mixon has, I mean, he's been practicing. There was a week long trial that he had to go to, so he missed some time. But he looks fine. Like he's 27 at this point. I think this is one of his last few years where he's going to be an effective lead back. But they're keeping him in that role as just the first and second down back. And you're right, Trevion Williams was re-signed this offseason to kind of take over for Samaje Perine, who left for Denver. He was the third down back. He was responsible for not only pass protection on those key downs, but also being an outlet in the passing game and trying to get yards after catch. Unfortunately, Trevion Williams suffered an ankle injury in the beginning part of training camp. He's been out for the past few weeks. He's not going to play in this preseason finale, and that's given Chris Evans a huge opportunity to regain trust with the coaching staff. In his first 2 years, he barely really saw the field because whenever he did, unfortunately, he just wouldn't get the job done, whether it be penalties or misreads or whatever the case may have been. He looked like he was on the outside looking in, entering training camp, and now he's changed, I think, a lot of people's minds because of how well he's been in pass protection, because of how much improved he's looked as a runner behind decent blocking. So he right now looks like the lead man for that third down role. We don't really know when Trevion Williams is going to come back, but even if he does, it might be like a taking that role and splitting it up between Trevion, splitting it up between Chris Evans, and then Chase Brown kind of backs them all up. He looks really talented. He looks like he has a lot of burst, which he does. So he's going to add a new dimension to the run game in the near future, but it just may not be right in the beginning of the season. They still need to work out some things, some pass protection. I think there's just a lack of overall trust there right now. So Chris Evans has definitely taken the biggest jump out of this group and maybe running back 2 in Cincinnati right now.
Yeah, so pretty much it's pump the brakes. Joe Mixon, he's not going anywhere. He's the man again for this season, and Chase Brown is going to come along slowly. And he's not going to be forced into action too early, and not that he's even ready. So, because I know that maybe wasn't the case a couple of months ago, but things change, especially the closer we get to the regular season. All right, tight end Irv Smith is in town, and this is a big addition if, at his age, he locks himself in and can have a very productive season, which we really haven't seen out of him so far. He's had an injury plagued career, of course, but he's talented. He's got Joe Burrow, and I'm sure the Bengals are hoping, I guess, and I'm sure Irv Smith is hoping that this could be more than a one-year thing.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I don't know if the Bengals are ready to commit to a single tight end. I think they'd rather be bachelors and just kind of go through these one-year deals as they kind of go along. But yeah, Irv Smith is 25, and he's, I think, the most athletic tight end the Bengals have had since at least Tyler Eifert, maybe even going back to Jermaine Gresham. And that opens up opportunities to kind of use him more as a vertical option in the passing game. And we've kind of seen shades of that in training camp. It's obviously a little different when you have Jake Browning and Trevor Siemian kind of throwing you the ball. And I think he's honestly been one of the, not losers, but he's definitely lost an opportunity to create a rapport with Joe Burrow with these live reps that he hasn't gotten with him in training camp. You know, like the big 3 receivers, like they've all gotten reps with Burrow throughout the course of their careers. And maybe you can make the same case for like the rookie receivers. They haven't really got a chance to establish any chemistry with Joe Burrow. But Irv Smith is going to be relied on for about 50, 60 targets this year. So that's more of a story. I think it's more of an impact when you're talking about that. But I think he looks the part as a guy who can stretch the defense a little bit more, who has a little bit of an edge in terms of route running compared to the players who came before him. Behind him, though, there's just not really a lot there. They brought Mitchell Wilcox back from the PUP list. He unfortunately had to rehab from a meniscus injury over the course of the offseason. He's probably your tight end, too, at this point, just because he's fully healthy and they have trust in him. Drew Sample is still here, and he's just a blocker at this point. He's not going to give you a lot in the passing game. I really do think that they're going to be scouring the waiver wire for another tight end who can give them something other than what Drew Sample, Devin Asiasi, and these guys can do. Tanner Hudson is also a name to watch as a guy who may make the roster, but he's more likely a practice squad guy because he's flashed in terms of athleticism, but he's unfortunately been injured for a little bit as well.
All right. Well, I know the Jets might have a good number 4 if they decide to keep 3. A kid by the name of Kenny Yeboah.
Okay.
Because they have this kid Ruckert who they like. Obviously, they got the 2 vets, as you know, one of them, But he's good on special teams. That's the thing. So if he gets let go, he's somebody to keep an eye on for sure. All right, let's talk about the offensive line, and this is really what everybody does want to talk about, besides Joe Burrow, is what is going on with the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. And as we talked recently, it's really not as bad as people think. Or at least that was the deal not too long ago. So been through camp. How's everything going? How's Jonah Williams feeling? And how's Orlando Brown taking in his new digs?
The tackle situation is stable, and that's something that hasn't been said in Cincinnati in quite some time. Orlando Brown looks the part. Like there are certain things that Orlando Brown is never going to be great at, and part of that is just handling speed. He's going up against Trey Hendrickson every day in practice, and Hendrickson is really good. He bends around the corner very well. So Hendrickson has gotten the best of him a few times, but that's to be expected. Orlando Brown is still one of the like one of the 10, 12 best left tackles at minimum in this league, and that's better than what the Bengals have had. Jonah Williams is the biggest question mark, though. How would he adjust to right tackle after not being there for the past 6-7 years since his freshman year at Alabama? And he looks to be acclimated as well as could have been expected.
Okay.
Like he looks very solid at right tackle. I don't want to say that they had a competition there. They've been easing Jonah Williams back because he suffered 2 dislocated knees over the course of last season. So they wanted to ease him back in to just taking reps. So they had him and Jackson Carman kind of switch off at first team right tackle, but Williams was by far like the better option there, and Jackson Carman does not look to be a viable option at right tackle. He's unfortunately, I think, just a left tackle only at this point. But the starting 5, very solid. Like there doesn't seem to be any leaks with this group, and I think we can confidently say this is the best Bengals offensive line that's been there since I think 2015 when they were pretty damn good.
That's great news. And what if there are some injuries? So talk about the depth, because the depth doesn't seem to be that bad. So how and Kirkland, how's he looking? I know we talked about him being a high draft pick prospect a few years ago before injuries and so forth. And you never know. You get into the league, anything can happen. So how's the backup situation?
Yeah, Kirkland specifically was looking pretty solid in the beginning parts of camp. He was flashing a little bit as a rookie guard could possibly do. When the preseason came, you saw the highs and lows. You saw the inconsistencies. So he looks to be a prime practice squad candidate. Okay. Other than that, I think when looking at this chart, I would probably put Deontay Smith as the backup left tackle ahead of Akeem Adeniji. I think Smith not only is probably that backup left tackle, but he's probably the swing tackle at this point. You're probably keeping him on the roster and you're activating him for game days. And if there's an injury at right tackle or left tackle, Deontay Smith is probably coming off the bench and playing an emergency role there. So I think he's done enough this offseason, training camp and preseason, to take that role. And he's ultimately won it over Adeniji and Jackson Carman. So if you're looking at those 3 tackles and you might only be able to keep 1 or 2, it's Deontay Smith and it's probably Jackson Carman just because of the financial implications with that. Okay. Max Sharping and Trey Hill are kind of competing for the backup center, the swing interior guy, if you will. They've given Sharping a ton of reps at center just to see what he can do, and he's looked pretty solid there. But Trey Hill, that's his natural position at center. So that's, I think, going to be a competition up until this weekend. They're going to maybe not make a decision on that until they absolutely have to.
Okay.
But we're looking at probably 9 players on this group that are going to make the team, not including Leo Collins, so they're going to keep and stash on the pup. So you're looking at Deontay Smith, probably Max Sharping, and Cody Ford, Jackson Carman are probably going to be your 4 backups there.
And Collins, what is his situation?
So Collins suffered a torn ACL at the end of last season, and he was looking like he was progressing through rehab over the course of the summer, but they've taken it really slow. He's ramped up that rehab process, but he just, unfortunately, he hasn't returned to practice yet. He hasn't been cleared to practice yet. So, I mean, it's a week until cut down. I won't imagine that they'll activate him at this point. I think they'll just stash him on the pup for 4 weeks, reevaluate then. And if that's the case and he's healthy in October, November, when an injury does happen, that's a great insurance policy to have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. All right, now let's slide on down to the defense. And, of course, we've seen this unit grow over the last few years. And Miles Murphy was the top draft pick. Matter of fact, you see their first, second, third round draft picks added to this defense, even though it could be where you have no draft picks starting on defense, but you do have a few new players. But let's talk about Murphy. So how's he looking? Because he's definitely somebody that in a position that the Bengals need. They need that, that extra pass rush, and hopefully they'll get that from Masai as well.
I think he's in the best possible spot for him because I think there are four other defensive ends who are ahead of him on the depth chart. I think both Cam Sample and Joseph Asai will see the field more often than him, at the very least in the beginning of the season when everyone's healthy. There's just more work for him to be doing. There's more development that needs to happen as a pass rusher, stringing together moves, timing off the snap, the whole 9 yards, because both Cam Sample and Joseph Asai, they're entering their third years in this defense with the same coaching staff. So you've seen them take some steps in their development, and I think they want to give them chances to really shine now as third-year players, which is perfectly fine. Miles Murphy is 21 years old, and like we talked about, he's got more work to do as far as like putting together the nuances of pass rushing. But I think as a run defender, I think he's fine. He sets the edge pretty well, and he's got athleticism to do that. So he's probably your edge number 5 at this point, and I think they're perfectly fine with that.
All right. And then talk about the interior of the defensive line. And how's DJ Reader going? He's healthy. Everything's on go. Because he's the big part of that interior, of course.
He is the literal biggest part of it, and he looks like DJ Reader. You know, he comes to practice with the same mentality every day, with a smile on his face, and it's hard to move him, man. So yeah, you got BJ Hill next to him at defensive tackle. Zach Carter, I think, he's on the verge of taking that year 2 leap because he was playing. He put on a lot of bad weight last year, and now I think he looks more, properly filled out that frame, I think, with like 15 or 20 pounds of added muscle there. So he's going to be your backup 3 technique. He's going to play 5 technique when they go into those 5-2 sets, and he's going to rotate in with BJ Hill a lot more frequently, which is good for BJ Hill as well. So if they can get a boost from Carter as a pass rusher, I think the defensive tackle room will look more improved than last year because DJ Reader, he still looks the same.
All right. And then, of course, the linebacking unit has really improved with the 2 of them. Pratt had a big breakout last year. We know Logan Wilson and even Davis Gaither upped his game. So those 3 guys, they're going to pretty much be the line. Those are the guys, right? You get the 2 starters, and then Davis Gaither will be like the premier backup.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, phenomenal working relationship that they have now. Like they're arguably like the 2 leaders on this defense. I think they're going to be tasked with a lot of the communication along with Mike Hilton because you did lose like 2 veterans behind them at safeties. So Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, they're totally on the same page. Great athletes. They obviously trust Wilson in coverage as that Mike linebacker, and I think they're going to give more responsibility in that regard to Pratt this year as well after re-signing him for 3 years. So they're very comfortable at linebacker right now.
Anybody else in that front 7? In the back end of the roster, like has to worry about being cut, and any name players or players that you think had good camps and we should keep an eye on maybe later this season?
I'm interested if Dominique Davis makes the cut. Like you can see he's third string at nose tackle. He's played both nose and just defensive tackle this year or this preseason, and he's looked really good, getting pressure up the middle. I think he's battling Jay Tufele to be that 5th defensive tackle if they happen to keep 5 defensive tackles. Obviously, Tufele is more experienced. He's got actual NFL snaps in the regular season, but I think Davis has just outperformed him in the preseason. So if he doesn't make the team, I think they're going to try like hell to get him back on the practice squad. But if he does get cut, it wouldn't surprise me if another team claims him.
All right. And then let's take a look at that secondary because over the last few years, there's been a lot of changes. You got 2 big draft picks. You got a 7th rounder as well. So how's the secondary looking?
So Chidobe Awuzie has been slowly working back. So he's been practicing, but not fully until I think just this past week. So he looks to be 100% back at cornerback, but his injury led to DJ Turner taking a lot of snaps as a rookie, and he's looked really good for a 2nd-round pick. He's elevated himself over a veteran in Sidney Jones as that cornerback 4 once the starting trio looks to be back on the field and healthy. So DJ Turner's going to be active. He's going to get emergency snaps when needed, and that's phenomenal as a rookie 2nd-round pick. DJ Ivey, I think, is going to be your 6th cornerback on this list. He's probably going to make it over Sidney Jones as well. Sidney Jones has unfortunately just, when the preseason began, he didn't look very good, and he's unfortunately been suffering or working back from a hamstring injury, so he hasn't been practicing as of late. So your 6 cornerbacks are Awuzie, Cam Taylor-Britt, who looks really good, Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, Jalen Davis, your backup nickelback, and DJ Ivy. I think is your six right there.
Yeah, and that's 2 hits in a row in the second round at corner, huh?
Looks to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and then at safety, you have a couple of new guys. Even though Hill was with the team last year, didn't play much. And then Battle comes in as a nice bargain in round 3. How's Tyson Anderson coming? Because I know there was. I know you had mentioned Anderson last year. So how's that room looking?
So it looks to be it's probably going to be the four that you see there in the
Okay.
first and second string. Michael Thomas, who's beloved as a veteran, special teams captain, but there just might not be enough room for him. And I think Tyson Anderson is going to do enough on special teams to kind of make up for that. But Anderson's he had a monstrous first preseason game, 2 interceptions and a pick 6, and he's playing behind this trio of Hill, Scott, and Battle, who I think you'll see for 10 snaps a game, all of them on the field on the same time. And I think the addition of Battle gives you the opportunity to use Dax Hill in various ways. Like he'll be up on the line of scrimmage in the slot, he'll be an overhang defender, but he'll also be back there as a post safety. And when all 3 of them are on the field, you have Nick Scott back there patrolling deep, and you have Jordan Battle in the box where he's more comfortable at. So Hill and Scott are your starters for 80%, 90% of the game. But I think that this trio now, with the addition of Battle, gives you more opportunities, gives you more chances to utilize Dax Hill, Nick Scott in different ways, because they're both plus athletes who have experience playing multiple positions. But I think after losing Bates and Von Bell in the offseason, they're feeling pretty good about safety, considering that was far from a guaranteed losing both of those guys.
Yeah, and so there's even then hope that another year Tyson Anderson could up his game too.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
sounds like a very underrated safety room there to keep an eye on. All right, and then McPherson, of course, we know how clutch he can be. Brad Robbins is the rookie. How's he looking?
Looking better than Drew Chrisman, which was all he needed to do.
Yep.
So
that's it. So Drew Chrisman is probably elsewhere. Give me a player. Any of the non-drafted rookies looking good at all, offensively, defensively? Because usually one a team. You mentioned Kirkland. You think who has the best shot of making the team from the non-drafted group?
It's a good question, because it wasn't necessarily a star-studded undrafted class. Like
No.
Kirkland got the most, he got the most buzz out of it all, and like him playing offensive line gave him that perceived chance. But I just don't think it's in the cards for him. Shedrick Jackson, I think, has surprised me the most, which it shouldn't been, because he's the nephew of Bo Jackson, so he's obviously got some speed.
Yeah.
And they've utilized him a lot in the preseason. Unfortunately, they're going to keep 7 receivers, and he's just not in that top 7. So I think they'll work hard to get him back on the practice squad. And if injuries do happen over the course of the season, he could have an opportunity to be elevated up there.
All right. And what are you feeling as far as your vibe for this season compared to the last few, which have been pretty successful? What are you thinking? I know the fans in general. I mean, it's at this point, it's about the Super Bowl, but are they going to get there? What do you think?
I don't know, man. This year's, it's different in the sense of there's actual expectations from the outside now, which was like last year. It was they're probably not going to be able to do it again.
Yeah,
and then them pulling off 10 straight wins kind of reaffirmed their place among the elite teams in the NFL. And now it's just kind of understood, okay, yeah, this is a championship team, and there are legitimate expectations that come with that. And I think they've kind of handled that pretty well. Like they just know what the deal is now. They know it's Super Bowl or bust legitimately for the first time in a long time. And I think there's a different vibe that comes with that. There's always going to be like, yeah, of course our goal is to win the Super Bowl every year, but I think only a handful of teams a year legitimately feel like that's realistic for them to accomplish that. And yeah, no one gives the Chiefs a better run for their money than the Bengals, and they're probably going to face them again if they both end up in the playoffs. So they're more battle tested than most teams in the NFL at this point, and they have a roster that's capable of outlasting attrition and injuries over the course of the season. It's just about making sure that the quarterback is fine and he's behind a decent offensive line, because when we see him protected with these receivers, there's just really no defense that can get in their way.
Yeah, and the thing too is that it's one thing to be successful in the regular season. It's another thing to have that aura of we're going to be just fine or we're going to be able to win a big playoff game. And
Yeah.
that's what Joe Burrow does to this franchise. And that's what makes them so intriguing. And I know you haven't, of course, been on my shows, but as we've talked the last few years during this run, I mean, I've bought in completely. I mean, I picked them to win the last 2 years, and I've felt pretty good about that, especially after Burrow came through for him. So now, like you said, now we're going to get all the bandwagon jumpers that are going to try to derail Cincinnati by talking about how great they are. But yeah, I still think they've got a. They're still Cincinnati though, and Mahomes is Mahomes in Kansas City, and there's still a lot of people out there that when it's said and done, I think there's still going to be a lot of doubters, which I think is a good thing. So
Yeah.
I feel pretty
I
good.
mean, Mahomes is Mahomes, and the Chiefs are the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Like they wear the crown for a reason, and I think most people understand that. I understand that perfectly. But when they line up, like anything can happen at that point, and I still think that this team gives them the best chance every single time that they face off, and it's a reason why all 4 games that they've played in the last 2 years have been decided by 3 points.
Yeah.
So it's always a game, and it just takes one bounce to go your way.
And they also can beat the Bills.
Yeah.
So, and that's also hard to do. So, well, I look forward to talking to you again later this season because I know we will. That's how successful this team is more than likely going to be once again, barring catastrophic injuries, things of that nature. You never know what's going to happen, but hopefully hopefully we're going to talk again a few times, and we'll see if Cincinnati can get back to the Super Bowl. How long has it been? Do you know the exact years? Do the Bengals get reminded of that?
Well, it was 1981, 1988, and now it's 1988, 2021. That's the previous times.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, next time maybe they'll also win one. So, but I'm sure they just want to get there again and see if they can actually complete the task and win a Super Bowl, which would be awesome for Cincinnati and their fans. I appreciate it, John. And we'll check out the podcast. Again, I'm going to have the link in the description area, including, of course, where to find all your other content with your new website that you're working for at A to Z Sports.com. So I appreciate it as always, John.
Thank you, Greg.
You got it.